Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide divorce valuation and mediation services in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we will discuss active and passive appreciation of separate property in divorce with the esteemed Dr. Ashok Abbott, who is an associate professor of finance at West Virginia University. He is the founder of Business Valuation, Inc., where he provides value by determining statistical significance, validating economic models, and providing rigorous empirical analytical support. So basically, just a super expert at research and all things valuation.
So it's just like the stock. You buy a stock, either you get the dividends, or if the company is able to reinvest them, then you get a big capital appreciation at the end. So that is kind of the same thing. If the individual has been drawing a large salary or some compensation out of the business, which has been entering the marital estate, and then to go back and say, because this business could pay this kind of a salary, therefore it must be worth $1 billion, kind of becomes a hard sell.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, in looking at this, that's where when we go back to what you were suggesting, this is where on occasion you would include an outside expert. And so you could have somebody come in and say, was that reasonable compensation?
Right.
Was this passive or active? How did you quantify? And then still maybe have two experts, because some of this is subjective. So we're trying to put a wrapper on how to put a number on it, and there's a lot of moving pieces.
So that is why when it is subjective, and in some cases there are things that cannot be quantified, but the idea is to reduce the area of subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to do is we want to set the outer limits of the uncertain area as narrow as possible. And that is what empirical analysis does for you, is that it allows you to take things off the table. And then is it reasonable? Is it not reasonable? That could be partly subjective, partly, again, that expert that comes in is going to look at what is the level, for example, where publicly traded companies are paying of the same caliber, same performance, what are the salaries in those areas. So as a percentage of revenue, let's say, if we say on an average, a well-run company pays 30%, 40%, 50%. And then you have this individual who is being paid 70%. Then yes, there is compensation that's additional, that has been taken, and that has already entered the marital estate.
Well, and I think that it's interesting. You brought up a couple times like owning a share of stock.
Right.
And quite frankly, owning a share of stock is sort of the perfect example of passive appreciation. Maybe? No?
Potentially.
Okay.
Again, say question is, for example, if you're a CEO or a CIO, someone at the C-suite level, a very substantial part of your contribution could be stock options.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And there, the value of those options changes with your performance.
Very true.
It's very important to look at, is that change in value a function of just the market, or is it as a result of the effort that you're doing? So one of the studies we are in the process of doing, we're looking at, there are very substantial differences across industries on how the managers are paid and what drives their compensation. There are industries where you are really being compensated or rewarded for increasing the revenues, even though those companies, the revenues are not translating into bottom line. But
True.
as long as they're bringing in the revenue, they're being handsomely rewarded. There are other companies, typically more established kind of companies, where you are rewarded for increasing the bottom line and not the revenues. And the performance that you see in those companies is exactly what people are being rewarded for. If you're being rewarded for increasing revenues without regard to the bottom line, then that's what you will do.
Mm-hmm.
And collect your big bonus because you generated another 100 million in sales. Now, whether that 100 million added value or not, or in some cases, we found that, it was interesting. There were some industries where an increase in sales was reducing value. The free cash flow was going down as the revenues were going up because they were giving huge incentives. They were making all different kind of adjustments to book those sales.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you sold, the less you made.
Mm.
And still, because the company had decided to invest in increasing sales and was compensating these managers, that's what they were doing.
Interesting. Now, what if I just owned like a share of Apple stock or Amazon stock?
Mm-hmm.
Could there still be components of active and passive appreciation in there if I'm just an outside holding some piece of stock?
Typically, no.
Okay.
If you have nothing to do with the business of that company, your asset is the stock,
Yes.
then that is a passive appreciation.
Perfect.
Provided
Yeah.
it was bought before the marriage or out of separate resources and kept separate ownership. All that commingling stuff has to be out.
Right. As long as you haven't done 800 other things with it that could cause it to
Yeah,
be something. But I
right.
think that helps people understand that you really have to be like outside of the wall of the business to just have it be completely passive.
Right. See, the 100% passive situation can be only like buying corporate stock
Mm-hmm.
and not have big enough that you are influencing the policy. Remember, that's the whole idea. I mean, if you are a 10% stockholder of a company, you may be having input in how things are done.
True.
But if you are 1 millionth of the shares are owned by you, you don't count for anything. So it's all passive.